Many thanks indeed for joining us on AM Live. It is a Friday, of course, the 24th of August. We have a lot lined up for you today on the Leadership Forum. We are going to be focusing on mainstreaming reconciliation and healing in the country. This is what will be the focus of our discussion. We already have our guests who are in studio with us, Patrick Obat, and of course we also have Florence Mpaye. Thank you for joining us this morning. We are looking forward to know what is happening as far as healing and reconciliation is concerned in this country. There is a new dialogue, how do you call it? The DCG? Dialogue Contact Group. That is what we are going to be talking about this morning. And of course, we want to know, since we came from these recent elections and also harking back to 2007, 2008 so far, has the country really dealt with the issue of healing and reconciliation? Or are we always picking up, the scab on an already healing a wound when it comes to an election, right? So we just let things just glide under and never dealt with decisively. That is what we're going to be focusing on. And of course, today, you know the drill, at least for Patrick, for Florence, we'll give you some time here on the lectern to talk to Kenyans about what this particular dialogue contact group is all about and moving forward. And I know this is just sort of a shadow group that is aiding the Building the Bridges initiative that has been touted also by President Uhuru Kenyatta, supported by Raila Odinga as well. So we shall look at that as well much later. So I'll give you the rules of engagement this morning, and sit easy. We're going to be enjoying ourselves. And of course, I know also Dr. Marunga is here with us. He will also be giving us a snippet of what they think when it comes to security matter. But just to give you the background, professionals and former elected leaders have formed a group to foster healing and unity. As I mentioned, the Dialogue Contact Group will shadow the Building of Bridges initiative and is designed along the lines of the 2001 Ufungamano initiative. The team brings together 40 people from different disciplines and aims to promote dialogue about national interest and offer recommendations on how to unite Kenyans. The DCG was unveiled by former Senate Speaker Ekwe Thuru, and he said the team should ensure the leaders delivered on their promises. He lauded the statesmanship demonstrated by President Uhuru Kenyatta and opposition leader Raila Odinga, whom he said had put aside their political differences for the sake of unity. Also, industrialist Manu Chandaria, former Rangwe MP Jem Ochodho, Erastus Mwencha, Suba Churchill, Kipruto Kirwa, Regina Opondo, and Joseph Mutie are members of the group. And it is a huge group, but we're going to just get a slice of them here in studio to tell us more about this particular initiative. So, you know the drill. You can hit us on Twitter. AM Live NTV is a Twitter handle. AM Live NTV, our profile name on Facebook. And 2686 is our SMS portal. Let's get talking. But before we drill deeper, we look at the dailies, starting with the Daily Nation. The deal Sosion got for teachers is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation today. Back to school. NAT Secretary General argues for favorable terms for promotion and transfers after 6 hours marathon meeting with TAC that also called off planned nationwide strike for Monday. That is what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation today. Union had threatened to paralyze schooling and exams in row with TAC. You can follow that particular what they agreed on. 5-day retreat. After intensive deliberations, both parties agreed to hold a 5-day retreat between September 30th and October the 5th for an in-depth examination and consensus on transfers, career progression, professional development and appraisal program. That is what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation today. Ruto, he says, I am a punching bag for rival lightweights. That story continues on page 6 of the Daily Nation today. Also, just want to show you what we have on page 20. This is page 3. Who honors women trailblazers for service to public, pioneers and champions in various fields from across the country are rewarded. This is on page 3 of the Daily Nation today. Awards given: Elder of Golden Heart. That goes to Miss Niva Mwendwa, Miss Ida Odinga, Dr. Julia Ojambo, and Margaret Kenyatta posthumously. Also, we have their Order of the Burning Spear, Miss Phoebe Esio, Miss Grace Onyango, nominated Senator Beth Mugo, ICC Judge Joyce Aloch, and former Maendeleo ya Wanawake Chairperson Zipporah Kitoni. Also others recognized, we have Professor Wanjiku Kabira Muthoni Lakima, Professor Maria Nzomo, Mary Okello, Jennifer Riria, and Evangeline Muli. Congratulations in order for all these women who are making us proud. Let's see what we have on the front page of The Standard, and this is what you're waking up to today. Ruto Twitter, rant over grafts survey. This is a joint front. A day after being listed in a corruption opinion poll, the Deputy President and Governor Anne Waiguru hold talks at his current home. This followed a Twitter attack on those criticizing his quest for wealth. You have this story continuing on page 6 of The Standard this morning, and a related picture, you can see it there. Deputy President William Ruto and Kirinyaga Governor Anne Waiguru during a meeting with the county's MCAs at his current home in Nairobi yesterday. He says those running the devil's gospel, that unless your father was a minister, a vice president, or a president, however hard you work, must remain poor, and if not, you must be corrupt and have stolen. They should know those without godfathers have God the Father. That is what Ruto is saying, and you can follow his story inside The Standard today on page 6. Also, women pleads for justice from police officers. Irene Beather here says truck drove past police roadblock as she was being mauled by wild animals. You can follow her story inside The Standard today. Let's see what we have on the front page of The Star, and this is your splash today. Even sons of the poor can be rich, Ruto tells critics. DP finds off corruption tag, intensifies 2022 campaign. Incensed by persistent criticism of his massive wealth, DP tells proponents of Injili ya Shetani that not only the sons of president can become rich. This is a story on page 6 of The Star this morning. Western leaders sign unity resolution. Political heavyweights from Western Kenya are scheming how to lock Deputy President William Ruto and Raila Odinga from the region. The unity drive, spearheaded by ANC leader Musalia Mudavadi, Ford Kenya, or Kenya's Moses Wetangula, and CS Eugene Wamalwa, also targets to erase the support enjoyed by the ruling Jubilee Party. This story continues on page 5, 4 and 5 of The Star. Handshake was private affair of no value. Our court, he says this, Third Alliance Party, or Third Alliance Kenya, has rubbished the handshake task force as an unconstitutional and private deal that is not enforceable at the public's expense. Third Way Alliance leader Ekuru Aukot has written to Head of Public Service Joseph Kinyua, demanding that the 14-member team be disbanded as it is a waste of public resources. We'll give you that story. Of course, we ran it the day before yesterday, and yesterday also in the morning for you. Hiring 5,000 cops on hold as top bosses fail to agree is another story on the front page of The Star this morning. Let's see what we have on the front page of the People Daily. And this is what the People Daily is holding for us today. Ruto on the war path. It says, those running Injili ya Shetani, that unless your father was minister, a vice president, or a president, however hard you work, you must remain poor, and if not a pauper, you must be corrupt and have stolen. They should know that those without godfathers, we have God the Father. Shindwe, he says. This is what Ruto said there. And then we have gloves off. This is another sub-headline there. Feeling politically pushed, Deputy President comes out guns blazing to neutralize graft salvos and devil's agenda aimed at scuttling his presidential ambitions. That story tucked away on page 6 of the People Daily. This morning, we continue and we take a look also on what we have on the front page of the Taifa Leo. Hamtatuweza. That is what we have as the splash there. Ruto na Waiguru wasema wapinzani wao wameamua kutumia kura za maoni feki kuwadhililisha. That is a story that you can follow it also on page 2 of Taifa Leo. Today you can see a related picture on the front page of Taifa Leo. Business Daily is holding this splash for you. Auctioneers strike as bad loans hit 264 billion shillings. Small traders and personal loans borrowers account for more than half of industry's non-performance debt, indicating tough times for households hit by economic slowdown. That is a story you want to follow on page 4 of the Business Daily. Mount Kenya Matatus announced 20% fare increase. Commuters using public service vehicles in the Mount Kenya region will from September the 1st pay 20% more for bus fare to cover additional cost of fuel as petroleum products start attracting 16% value-added tax. You can follow this story on page 4 of the Business Daily. Also, same NHIF rates for all hospitals. That is what we have there. A proposed amendment to the NHIF Act could see the public health insurer compelled to charge uniform fees for medical procedures and drugs across different hospitals. You can follow this story on page 4 of the Business Daily today. Also, Bobi Wine, a trial, a standalone picture here. Uganda's pop star MP Robert Changulanyi, aka Bobi Wine, at the Chief Magistrate's Court in Gulu, northern Uganda yesterday. You can follow this story inside the Business Daily. Also, we'll give you gritty details of this much later in the course of the program. Let's see what is happening still in Uganda across the region following that story of Bobi Wine. And you can pick up also a copy of the Daily Monitor. Why Army dropped gun case against Bobi Wine is a splash. The Kiandondo East MP was later rearrested and taken to the Gulu Chief Magistrate Court. The MP and his co-accused were allowed private doctors. You have the story on page 3, just to show you what it says. Also on page 3, Bobi charged with treason, court orders his treatment, and you have all the gritty details of this on page 3 of the Daily Monitor if you're waking up in Uganda. Let's move on and to see what is happening in Tanzania. We have the Citizen for you in Tanzania. This is your splash. Private sector to thrash out differences with government. Meeting comes amid the assumption that the government is steadily shifting its focus to doing business with itself. And that story is tucked away on page 2 of the Citizen in Tanzania. Also, how lack of consumer affairs policy affects you. Get all the details. Why a dark cloud hangs over Airtel's planned share sell. In its current financial position, it may be difficult for the company to attract investors during the IPO process, as latest financial results show that it is a loss-making entity. That is what we have on the front page of the Citizen. Also, treason charges for Bobi Wine as Besigye arrested is another story. You can follow it on page 8 of the Citizen. In Tanzania still we have Mwananchi. Wabunge 19 wa Chadema kulinda kura za uchaguzi is a splash. Follow it on page 5 of Mwananchi. Let's cross over to Rwanda, where we have the New Times. Uber expresses interest in Rwandan market. There they go, expanding their footprint. And that is what we have on the front page of the New Times if you're waking up in Rwanda. Also, Kagame rallies Gisagara residents to vote for RPF, and you can see him here, President Kagame waving at Gisagara district residents on arrival in Mungaza sector yesterday in his capacity as chairman of RPF Ikotanyi. The president rallied support for the 80 candidates fronted by the party for the upcoming parliamentary elections. He called on thousands of voters in the districts to vote for RPF Ikotanyi. Wow, it's such a crack joke for me there. So that the party can continue working to develop the area and the entire country. That story continues on page 4 of the New Times if you're waking up in Rwanda, that is. And let's see also this week what has been the splash on the front pages of the East African. From slum to the bows, the rise of Sipla, Haiti success, drug distributor that began life in Katwe slum has become the first privately founded firm to list on Uganda Stock Exchange. You can follow that story inside the East African. If you never grabbed a copy this week, Vodacom MD waits for work permit. And this is all about Sylvia Mulinge. No word from immigration 4 months after Miss Mulinge was appointed to head down office. And of course, remember, she was at Safaricom. But that is how the story is turning out. You can follow all the gritty details inside East African this week. Bobi Wine tests Museveni, Besigye, that story on page 9 of the East African. Lastly, let's see what we have on the front pages of this magazine. The Nairobi Law Monthly has been holding, or is holding, this particular cover for you. State capture, the Rai Republic. That's how it looks if you've not grabbed also the Nairobi Law Monthly. And also we have the Nairobi Business Monthly, Asmara Code, spells doom for Kenya. Ethiopia forging an economic partnership with Eritrea. Was Kenya's only remaining partner in the LAPSSET project? Where does this leave Nairobi's debt-laden government? Probing questions there. And we can also take a keener look at the editorial cartoons that we have this morning. Allow me to just pick one or two so that you can see them. There we go. This is what is in the Star today. Trump tweets on South Africa's land expropriation, and this it has really touched a raw nerve in South Africa. We'll give you the details much later about this particular tweet that they say is promoting or also is fomenting racial division in South Africa. Let's see what we have also inside the Standard. This is what has been drawn there by Gado today. It doesn't matter how many of us you kill, we will always outnumber you. And you can see there on the tank is M7, and people have died so far as this by-election is concerned in Uganda. And lastly, let's see, try and grab some of the editorial cartoons that we have also in the other dailies, trying to see if I can get the People Daily for you to see what Stano has drawn for us today. And this is what Stano has drawn also. It's following the same trend, right? Wine should never give you sleepless night, trash, handshake. This is what maybe I'll leave it for you to decipher. Uhuru Kenyatta will tell Museveni in Uganda. And let's see what we do have also from Munene as well, as far as the editorial cartoon is concerned. Try to see if I can grab it quickly for you to see. This is what Munene has drawn inside the Daily Nation today. Hello, people's power, my foot. Why don't Kenyans direct that energy in fighting corruption, power bills, high food prices, MPs, pay hike, national debt, high taxes? That is what has been drawn by Munene inside the Daily Nation today. All right, let's swing for the fences right now by looking at the highlights. Deputy President rubbishes Ipsos Synovate polls as mere political tools. Also in South Africa, Trump accused of stoking racial divisions in South Africa's deeply emotive land debate. And Chris Martin, Angelique Kidjo and Diamond Alban among musicians calling for release of wine. Deputy President William Ruto says he will not be distracted by what he called under-the-table political tactics by his opponents. Ruto says the allegations against him were fake, sponsored by political lightweights out to derail his ambition. The Deputy President spoke when he met with Kirinyaga Governor Anne Waiguru and 33 members of the Kirinyaga County Assembly who voiced their support for the Ruto-Waiguru partnership for 2022. And this is what has been headlining most of the dailies this morning. And of course, we've just run that by you from the Daily Nation, also on the front page of the Star as well.
Mnaona kwa magazeti wamejaza maneno porojo ya ufisadi kwa magazeti, wamejaza story headline kwa magazeti. Hawa watu mimi nataka niwaeleze, wakimalizana na kuandika headline na opinion poll ya bure, tukutane kwa wananchi.
Unaweza ambao wache siasa, lakini unapigwa na siasa. Na ukipigwa na siasa lazima urudisha na nini? Na siasa. Kwa sababu huwezi rudisha na uteknokrasia ama tuanze kuongea maneno mengine. Tukisema ni siasa ni siasa.
Whole of this story about constant, perennial, unending headlines about William Ruto this, William Ruto that, opinion poll this, corruption the other, is sponsored by our competitors because they cannot match our development record.
Yale tuliona jana, sisi niseme hivi, ni dhahabu lazima ingie kwa na hii dhahabu inaingia kwa moto, imezoea si ndio? Gavana wetu hata amezoea moto. Sasa hii ni mambo kidogo.
You know the CV of our governor. It is not foreign to you. You know her maybe better than we know her. Weka yeye number 2. Alafu tutapanda na nyinyi hiyo mlima. Tutaenda na nyinyi mpaka mwisho. Kiwe liwe liwalo.
Kirinyaga is one voice. Hapa kuna MCA, amelazimishwa kukuja. Yuko mtu amelazimishwa? Tuko kama there's one thing we are speaking in one voice, ni tuko nyuma yako.
And Embakasi North Member of Parliament James Gakuya has denied fraud charges relating to tenders for repair of roads in his constituency. Appearing before Magistrate Felix Komba, the MP and his co-accused pleaded not guilty to the charges of mismanagement and embezzlement of 39.8 million shillings. They were each released on a 2 million shillings cash bail or 5 million shillings bond with a surety of similar amount after the court rejected the prosecution's plea to have the accused denied bail. The lawmakers were arrested on Wednesday by detectives from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. The Nairobi-based businessman charged with bribing Governor Mike Sonko with 5 million shillings will remain in custody pending his bond application ruling. Mombasa Senior Principal Magistrate Henry Nyakwera ordered the suspect to be remanded at Port Police Station. Also, Praful Kumar denied offering the bribe to the governor to approve the building of Grand Monar Hotel in Gigiri. The suspect was also charged with a second and third count of offering 2 million shillings to the governor for approval of the construction of the building. The prosecution said the suspect committed the offense on August the 20th at Kanamai in Kikambala, Kilifi County. Now, musicians including Chris Martin, Angelique Kidjo and Damon Alban are among stars who signed a petition calling for the release of imprisoned musician and parliamentarian, I should say, Bobi Wine. The musician turned politician, who is also known as Robert Changulanyi, was arrested with 4 other lawmakers on August the 13th on suspicion of involvement in the stoning of a presidential convoy during a Uganda parliamentary by-election campaign. In the petition, the stars condemned the arrest and what they said was the vicious, life-threatening physical attack by the government on Bobi Wine whilst incarcerated. We also condemn the unprovoked killing of his driver, Yasim Kawuma, as well as the beating and the arrest of 3 other opposition members of parliament. They added the music artist was charged with treason over his alleged role in the stoning of President Yoweri Museveni's convoy this month. His detention has sparked anti-government demonstrations in the capital Kampala and other parts of the country this week. Other stars, including musicians Brian Eno and Peter Gabriel and Nobel laureate Nigeria Wole Soyinka were also among those who signed the petition.
Come together, we can change our destiny. Uganda, webase mama, zukukabambi.
Now, at least 4 people, including security personnel, were killed in a gun attack by suspected militants on a checkpoint east of the Libyan capital, Tripoli, on Thursday. The attack took place between the town of Zliten and Coms on the coastal road leading from Tripoli to the port city of Misrata, according to Zliten mayor. Right, we want to center our focus on what we'll be discussing this morning: mainstreaming, healing and reconciliation in the country. Professionals and former elected leaders have formed a group to foster healing and unity. The Dialogue Contact Group will shadow the building of Bridges Initiative and is designed along the lines of 2001 Ufungamano Initiative. Now, the team brings together 40 people from different disciplines and aims to promote dialogue about national interests and offer recommendations on how to unite Kenyans. The DCG was unveiled by former Senate Speaker Ekwe Othuro. He said the team should ensure that leaders delivered on their promises. He lauded the statesmanship demonstrated by President Uhuru Kenyatta and opposition Chief Raila Odinga, whom he said had put aside their political differences for the sake of unity. Also, industrialist Manu Chandaria, former Rangwe MP Shemo Chodho, Erastus Mwencha, Suba Churchill, Kipruto Kirwa, Regina Opondo and Joseph Mutie are members of the group, amongst others. And of course, we have a slice of them also in studio here to tell us more about this particular initiative. But what do you reckon, right, since we had these horrid stories about post-election violence and went through that harrowing torture in 2007, 2008, have we healed as a country? Or when it comes to every electioneering period, are we picking scab on an already healing wound, right? So this is what we want to discuss today. And what does it portend with the building initiative that has been, of course, touted by so many in the country, that has brought peace so far? Is it just, yeah, or maybe a passing cloud? But when it comes to another electioneering period, we'll go back to the same state that we were. So this is what we'll be discussing this morning. Allow me to introduce our panelists today. But remember, you can hit us on Twitter. AM Live NTV is our Twitter handle. AM Live NTV is our profile name on Facebook. Also, 20686 is our SMS portal. We have them here. We have Dr. Captain Wirunga Simiyu, who is a security reforms expert, also is the CEO of the African Center and Security Strategic Studies. Also, we do have with us this former senator of the former Speaker of the Senate, Ekwe Othuro, with us this morning. We have also Florence Mpayea, she's a former also member of parliament and a lecturer. We do have with us also Suba Churchill, who is the chair of CSO Reference Group and also member of the Dialogue Contact Group. We have with us as well Patrick Obath, who is a vice chair of KEPSA Foundation, and he'll be telling us more also how the private sector is coming in as well. Whom have I left? No one. Right. Good morning, gentlemen and lady. Fantastic. Right. We just want to delve deeper into it, and how we normally do it on this show every Friday. We give our panelists opportunity on the lectern. This will be a surprise to many of you, but I know your leaders also, the lectern is not something which is new for you. And we'll give you an opportunity, just 6 minutes, for you to be there on the lectern to tell Kenyans what this Dialogue Contact Group is all about. And so far, as a country, how have we dealt with the issue of national healing and reconciliation? And why should we have the Building Bridges Initiative, yet also issues that has been captured in the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission has not been dealt with? Because sort of people are saying this is a duplication from the TJRC report. And momentarily we'll be playing clips also here of what the Third Way Alliance, chair is saying, that we don't need the Building Bridges Initiative right now. It is a waste of taxpayers' money. So these are issues that we want to broach this morning. So just to give you rules of engagement, I have my yellow card, my red card, and my yellow card here. Right. So this is just for the sake of keeping time. I know most of you. Okay, not most of you. Yeah, one of you is a politician, and we know how they normally react when they're given the lectern as well. And I'm not saying, Bwana Ekuro, this is what you normally go through, right? But we want to say, of course, this is just for keeping time. I'll raise the yellow midway, so we have 6.
Is the politician allowed to intervene?
So yeah, you'll just give you, of course, 6 minutes. So midway, I'm gonna raise the yellow just to warn you. Yes, you're midway. Red, just to tell you. So you should be winding up. then I have my bell. When is the last time you had a toll of a bell? Right, so that is just also to make sure, yes, to tell you your time is out, and if you don't come out of the lectern, I'll come over there and yank you from the lectern as well. So let's just begin with Florence. Florence, remember also, Florence, you're tethered to the mic. This is something I've not told you. Yes, so you can just remove your microphone. Yes, you can remove it now, then just head over to the lectern where we have another microphone for you. We have camera 3. Camera 3 is where you're going to look at or talk to Kenyans. It is just right across the lectern, so you can just look at it and speak to Kenyans. So we're going to hear from Florence Mpaye, and she's walking over now to the lectern, and she will give us a snippet of what the direct or the dialogue contact group is all about, and she'll tell us more about herself. And you have 5 minutes. Let me try and also set my timer here so that I can keep time and also make sure also you keep time as well. Let's begin now.
So thank you very much for having me on this show this morning. My name is Florence Mpaye, as you have heard, a practicing peace builder for the past 20 years, and also a lecturer at the Hekima Institute of Peace Studies, where we offer a master's program on peace studies and international relations, and also a student on leadership. Talking about the Dialogue Contact Group, this is an inclusive, multi-sectoral, people-centered initiative or a forum that brings together different actors who primarily were concerned with the way the elections had turned out in 2017, and felt that there was need for us to come together and begin to deliberate on how do we break this cycle of violence that we constantly witness every 5 years. And as somebody who's worked in the area of peace building in this country for many years, beginning all the way back when we had the land clashes in the 1992, before we even had the peace building policy, before we had organs in the government, like the National Steering Committee that looks into issues of conflict management and peace building. Way before those were established, there were citizens in this land that felt that there are alternatives to violence. There are alternatives to how we resolve conflicts, and there are mechanisms, various mechanisms, including dialogue, mediation, negotiation, where if we do not agree on issues, be they political, be they social cohesion, be they how we organize ourselves in terms of governance, be it how inclusive and how we live with one another, that there are alternatives to violence. And so we pushed for that agenda, not only here in Kenya, but even in the region. And so for us, the whole question of having dialogue across different divides, having dialogue when we are in disagreement, is really something that we espouse and something that we wish to promote. So this dialogue contact group came together to just, as a result of stepping back and saying, the direction that the country was going, very divisive, no respect for the human person, no respect for the rule of law, a sense of lost in terms of direction by the leaders, and asking ourselves, how do we break this cycle of violence? How do we bring to bear that each Kenyan is important, and each Kenyan has a role to play in determining how they want to be governed and what kind of Kenya they would like to live in, and how we also expand opportunities. How do we become more inclusive, not only in terms of the politics, but also inclusive in terms of the various gender that we have in society, people with different abilities in the society. How do we become inclusive, and how do we restore human dignity? So the Dialogue Contact Group is really a forum that holds different meetings, in, depending on whatever sector each one of the initiative comes from, to just try and see how do we begin to ask Kenyans to have meaningful conversations with one another, so that we don't find ourselves every 5 years back into the cycle of violence. And so that is what the Dialogue Contact Group is all about. And so in this particular forum, I, for instance, come from the Hekima Institute of Peace Studies, and in that space what we do provide is a safe space where citizens from all walks of life can come and be able to engage on issues of divisive politics, on issues of negative ethnicism, on issues of the economic reforms that are needed, on issues of how we create more opportunities for the youth, on issues of security sector reforms, how we organize ourselves as Kenyans. So creating that safe space where people can have meaningful engagement and be open, because healing cannot come until people are willing to walk a journey together of really creating understanding and seeing each other from where each person stands and what their perspective is with regard to national issues. So we have the hope that with the Dialogue Contact Group, that we will open the whole conversation of supporting the Building the Bridges initiative and saying that every Kenyan, every citizen, both the politicians and the citizens, we each have a role to determine the destiny of this nation. And we need to have very candid discussions if at all we are to achieve healing and reconciliation in the nation. So that is what primarily the Dialogue Contact Group is all about. It's about how do we restore the human dignity of the Kenyan person? How do we reclaim the soul of the nation? We don't want to wake up every day and we are faced with charges of corruption, and at the level of leadership or even at the level of the citizens. How do we turn around and begin to dignify the human person in this nation?
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Florence. Of course, you can take your seat right now. We shall take I've taken some of the salient points that you've raised this morning, and we will be looking at that also much later in the course of the program. Up next, I want to call upon Churchill Suber to walk on to the lectern as well. And remember, you can hit us on Twitter. AM Live NTV is a Twitter handle. AM Live NTV is also our profile name on Facebook. He's a national coordinator of National Civil Society Reference Group. He'll tell us more about himself also on the lectern today, and what the civil space is doing, or civil society space is doing in terms of trying to make sure that we foster national healing and reconciliation in the country. So you have 6 minutes beginning now, sir.
Thank you very much, Debarl. I'm privileged to be part of this discussion, and to say that the Civil Society Reference Group has been part of two processes, one of them being Kura Yangu Sauti Yangu in the period leading to the 2017 elections that transformed into We the People, and which has since brought on board a number of professionals and initiatives that were initially not part of mainstream civil society. I have also been, the Civil Society Reference Group has also been part of the multi-sector forum that normally meets at Fungamano, and that has been seeking to address some of the challenges that have bedeviled us as a country, and which we hope to resolve. Now, when the Building Bridges initiative came up, there was a feeling that there was need to harness and mobilize the population to be part and parcel of that process. We all know that the Building Bridges initiative came to all of us as a surprise. The initiators, the Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga and His Excellency the President, have since explained time and again why, for the time that they were talking, they kept it away from the public. Nevertheless, now that the matter is in the public domain, there is a strong feeling that in order to generate sufficient democratic ownership of the restoration of peace and harmony in the country, that there is need to bring citizens on board and ensure that they are part and parcel of that process, because whenever there are skirmishes, whenever there is disharmony in society, whenever we have fought each other as a country, and I was glad that the President, His Excellency, yesterday pointed out that what we have are indeed self-inflicted challenges, then it is the citizens that suffer, it is the women that suffer, it is the children that are killed, as we witnessed in the violence that followed the 2017 elections. Innocent children that were playing in the fields, in their backyards, found themselves victims of stray bullets, or those that were particularly aimed at them, as indeed happened with Baby Pendo in Kisumu. So the dialogue contact group ideally should be the convergence of all these different initiatives. The multi-sectoral forum under the dialogue reference group. We have the National Mediation Forum. We have had an initiative stewarded by Honorable Dr. Shemo Chuodo, who is a former MP for Rangwe, called Tushauriane. And it was felt by these non-state actors and professional bodies that rather than have each of them pursue a different path, yet we are heading to the same direction, that there be a convergence of all these initiatives, and therefore the dialogue contact group therefore is the point at which these different initiatives converge and compare notes and harness their synergy towards achieving the national goal. One may think that these initiatives came up in the wake of the Building Bridges initiative. That is not true. The truth of the matter is that these initiatives have been there. You remember the multi-sector forum, for example, is the one that interviewed and brought into place the current crop of IBC commissioners, some of whom have since resigned because of the sheer pressure and accountability issues. And so these initiatives have been there, and therefore the dialogue contact group is supposed to be the convergence point that brings together with the people of which I'm an integral part, the multi-sector forum under the dialogue reference group, the National Mediation Forum, Tushauriane, and all those initiatives that have been pursuing peace. We are happy that for the first time we have an opportunity of its own kind to intervene in these situations, contrary to what we have done in the past. Previously, we have waited until the elections are at the door, and that is when we have sought to address some of these challenges, leaving us very little time to delve into the causes, the root causes, and therefore, for us as civil society, as the multi-sector forum, as with the people, we are hopeful and optimistic that the ample time that BBI has brought about will accord Kenyans an opportunity to go into the root causes of these issues. As civil society, of course, we are worried also. We have taken this BBI with a bit of caution because we all know that politicians will always go for the low-lying fruit. So we are tagging along to be sure that people's issues are, one, brought to the table, and secondly, that politicians do not hang their boots as soon as they catch the low-lying fruits. We want to go for those high-flying fruits that are pro-people, that will ensure that the challenges that have faced us as a country are addressed once and for all.
Right. Thank you, Churchill Suba, walking back there to his seat. Of course, we've picked up the salient points from him as well. We'll quickly head over now to Patrick Obath, who's the Vice Chair of KEPSA Foundation, also to give us his thoughts about mainstreaming healing and reconciliation and the dialogue contact group as well. Patrick, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Debarl. I will not redefine the dialogue contact group. The previous two speakers have done that eloquently. What I'd like to really do is to say, why is the private sector involved in this activity that is unusual for the private sector to be involved in? A lot of the private sector is normally seen as, focus on business, do business, and, shut your ears and eyes to anything else happening. But the reality is that in 2007, 2008, I think there's a wake-up call to the business community at that time. What happened affected almost every single strand of this country, including business. And at that point in time, the business leaders who were there at the time, myself included, woke up and said, we have to really get involved in socio-political issues rather than just talk about business. And from then on, we formed different contact mechanisms with the government, with parliament, with the civil society as well, and started talking to each other. But it was still, I'll talk to you, then I go and do my own thing. I'll talk to you, then I go and do my own thing. It was all around, just finding out what the other people are doing, and then you move away. And I think the importance of this dialogue contact group is that it recognizes that every single body that is involved there has got their own strength that they can bring to the conversation. And by bringing that conversation, bringing them together, we can actually discuss what we are all doing, look at the common themes that are emerging, and then go back and practice it in the way we know best. So civil society has got their strength. The different organizations, the politicians have got their strengths. Business has got their strength, and we then harness that to actually move forward the whole process of reconciliation and healing in the country. And I think that one of the things as business that we've recognized is that it is not necessary for one person to be the leader of everything. It is necessary for one person to be the leader of what they know best. And even within our own business organizations, exactly the same thing happens. So the Dialogue Contact Group is, for us, the best way of harnessing this energy. And talking a little bit about the handshake, what I'd like to put on the table is that the handshake is an example of what every single Kenyan should do. We should not look at the handshake between the Honorable Raila Odinga and His Excellency the President as being the thing that we all want to sort of go and get involved in. They have just shown the country what is possible by two people coming together, shaking hands and agreeing, listen, I've got my agenda, you've got your agenda, but let us not have conflict as a result of the fact that our agenda may appear to be conflicting. In fact, if you look at what the two of them put their handshake on, one of them had the issues of development, going forward, delivering on the Big Four agenda, which was very clear. The other one had issues around electoral justice and issues around elections and so forth. Now, the two things are not in conflict. Each of them actually has their own position. So by doing the handshake meant that they recognize that each of those positions are not actually in conflict. So remove the conflict that was being sort of built around the fact that the president said this and Raila said this, and therefore they're on different sides of the Rubicon. Of course, they were pursuing different agenda. So by taking the handshake, they basically said, I've got this agenda, I've got this agenda, let's put them together and move the country forward. And that is what the handshake for us means, is that we need, as a country, to go ahead and say, I recognize my neighbor, we may have our differences, but we also need to live in this country, and we need to forge a way of working together, but still recognize that we've got our differences. And the DCG is almost a similar organization. We all have different ways of working, and therefore, let us put all that together and make a difference for this country. So, in closing for me, I'll say that let us not look at what the handshake can do for us, which is what is beginning to appear with a lot of people. They're saying, what can the handshake do for me here? Why let me go to the president or Raila and ask them to do this? No. Let us see what we can do for the handshake. The handshake is a symbolic expression of the fact that we need to work together as a nation. So each of us needs to embrace the handshake in that spirit. And that is what this Dialogue Contact Group is. We've actually embraced the handshake. We are coming together. We are all shaking hands and saying, what can we do as a DCG to realize the same aspirations that have been done at the sort of what I call the apex handshake. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick Obath. And of course, we'll be discussing some of the salient points he's raised as well here on AM Live. Remember, you can head over to our Twitter handle, which is AM Live NTV, AM Live NTV, or profile name on Facebook, and 20686 is our SMS portal. I can just read one or two before we take a short break. It's 2 minutes to time. We have Jacob Abere Mtalala saying, hope and believe it is time nation's ailment conversation, truth be said, across cross-cut issues of gender, Kenya without sugarcoating. Also, we have Abdallah Madamba saying, does the duty, or asking maybe, does the duty to remember, as promoted in what could be called the mainstream transitional justice discourse, really enable reconciliation and healing of societies in the aftermath of mass violence? He's asking there a searing question as well. So we'll pick up on this. On the other side of a break, we'll hear from the first speaker of the Senate. This is Ekwe Eturo. And of course, we'll hear also from a security expert here. This is Dr. Werunga Simiyu as well. So don't go away. Let's hear your sentiments as far as mainstreaming, healing and reconciliation is concerned. Do we go this way? We have the TJRC report. We have the building initiative on the other hand. We've had also Fungamano initiatives. Of course, that was diametrically different with other initiative as far as the politics of the country is concerned. But we'll drill deeper on this. Also, taking the flip side of it, how would we handle the dissenting voices like the Third Way Alliance Party, which is saying, no, we don't need the BBI. Actually, it's another, of course, expense to the taxpayers that we are saddling so much on their backs with taxation. Don't go away, much more coming up on the other side of a break. Welcome back. You're watching the Leadership Forum, and today we're turning our focus on mainstreaming healing and reconciliation in the country. And of course, this is doggedly following the launching of the Dialogue Contact Group, which is aiding the Building Bridges initiative in the country to foster unity in the country, alongside other issues that were raised in the 9-point agenda. Right now we have the first speaker of the Senate. This is Ekwe Ithuro, who is actually on the lectern today to talk to us about this particular initiative and what he thinks where the country is right now as far as politics is concerned. Do we just have a band-aid solution to, the political solutions that we do, all the malaise in this country, or this is an enduring solution that we have with the BBI so far? And how also is that Dialogue Contact Group aiding the BBI to make sure they realize 9 points agenda? So you have 6 minutes beginning now.
Thank you, Debarl. Good morning, viewers. I think when Debarl was giving us instructions, he had me in mind because I'm the only politician amongst here. But I want to assure you, I was doing that job you are doing now.
Oh, really?
In the last 5 years. So thank you for smoking me out of my cool retirement, and particularly to this leadership forum.
Thank you.
The leadership question, dear Kenyans, has been a very important question for me in terms of a practical way as a leader, but also now as an academic. I'm actually doing a PhD at the Management University of Africa on leadership and management. And so this is a question that really is important to me. So for me, the opportunity of the handshake is a golden opportunity for the Republic, that the initiatives that we have been giving impetus at the grassroots level, at the KEPSA level, I do appreciate the impact KEPSA and the Interfaith Council has really been on the political space. So for me, this handshake is a policy statement that our leaders have come together across the political divide to give us direction. So the question now is basically what Suba mentioned. We are concerned that politicians will seize opportunity, yes, but they have a short span. Our issue as Kenyans is to ensure that this handshake will last. And I think that's what you have actually wanted me to discuss. And that's exactly why we came together in that multi-sectoral forum. We say, let's give support to the handshake. Let's give support to the Building Bridges initiative so that it is not just owned by 2 individuals, by a team of 14 eminent as they are and qualified as they are, and we support them, but can that cascade to the ordinary Mwananchi, the famous Wanjiku, so that, is that the only agenda? Is it only the big 4? Is it only the 9 things that were agreed in the memorandum? Or there are other issues? Are there other ways in which we can prosecute the same issues for the same results or better results? And I think a nation that goes into a conversation with itself is a nation that is destined to win. Kenya in particular is a great country whose potential has been inhibited for a long time by a quarrelsome political elite. And so for us, this opportunity of the handshake is a new dawn for the nation. I know many of us sometimes we can easily give up because there have been similar initiatives. We have been waiting for elections. But I think this time now, we are saying, can we address some of these issues before election time? So that there is no particular self-interest, there is no particular immediate gain, but we are looking actually at a long-term conversation that can take this country to where it belongs. We are great marathoners. The whole world knows that. If you can achieve things in a fiscal manner. We are great scientists. The whole world knows that. So we want now to say, what can the ordinary person do? What can organized civil society do? What can a private sector do? What can politicians do? Both present and former politicians. Because sometimes, only yesterday we were, not yesterday, the other day, we were at a safari park as former parliamentarians. And the question we are asking ourselves, do you become just useless because you, Wananchi decided you can take a break? Because you are not a loser because in the first instance you won. That's why you represented them. So these are opportunities that Kenyans decide to give their own to serve at a particular time. But you can only have left Parliament a better person because you have gained experience, you have legislated, you have done things for the Republic, which now we must bring to bear. So this season is also very interesting because when you're down the road, we remember the death of Bethel Kiplagat. Recently, Kofi Annan, the one who brokered our peace at a time when we were butchering each other, just passed on. I think this country owes these two gentlemen a great legacy in terms of their contribution to our society. We owe it to ourselves. The issues we still started at independence, illiteracy, poverty, they are still with us. Why should the city like Nairobi be having slums where people can hardly eat? These are some issues we want to bring to this agenda of building the nations. I am convinced that we have the framework in terms of the Constitution, Article 43, in terms of basic services. There is a commitment in terms of rolling out the NHIF program. And so we have the ingredients of actually a great nation. We have the big infrastructural projects which are being worked on. We need to do it. My last appeal is to the politicians. Sometimes people get worried about the tyrant of numbers. You know, before it was Jubilee tyrant of numbers, now with the NASA numbers, we'll have no opposition. I want to appeal to members of Parliament. It's possible to have internal opposition in terms of putting the real issues of Kenya at the front. We did it in the 10th Parliament. If you remember the time when Right Honorable Raila and Mwai Kibaki came together, and we had, to me, one of the most effective legislatures we have had as a country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. I can see the leadership lessons are working. Yeah. Right. Timekeeping. Right now, we want to hear from Dr. Murunga Simiyu, who is working to the lectern right now. He's the CEO of African Center for Security and Strategic Studies, and he's going to tell us more about also the security element when it comes to healing or mainstreaming healing and reconciliation as well. And good to see you after a longer while.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, I think one of the points that the President and the Honorable Prime Minister mentioned, or they thought they should deal with under this framework of building bridges, was about security. And all of us have been in this sector, and we know no country can prosper, no country can talk of democracy if its policing is not democratic. And therefore we are looking at the aspect of how do we then ensure that even as we talk about reconciling this country, what role and at what level of professionalism is the police going to play to ensure that as a country we heal, knowing that we are being policed by an organization that is democratic, an organization that is reformed, and an organization that has achieved a strategic goal under the framework of security sector reform. And therefore we want to look as a group together with the 14 eminent people to ensure that we are not taken for a ride again. Because police reform started immediately after post-election violence. One thing I want to remind Kenyans is that all this time we've been having this national cohesion and whatever commission, they never undertook the last bit of peace building and conflict resolution, which is reconciliation. And every time I had the opportunity to meet Honorable Kapara, I'll ask him, as you talk about hate speech all over, what mechanisms did you put in place to deal with the reconciliation? Because you cannot talk of peace, resolving conflicts, if the nation has not reconciled by itself. And therefore, within this framework of building bridges, as a contact group, a dialogue group, we want to see what is to be done and whatever is going to be put under the framework of reconciliation, that the country has mechanisms that are going to work. But you cannot achieve that if our policing instruments and institution is not reformed, is not democratic. And I want to share with Kenyans because we've been in this game of reforms of police. And I used to tell Kenyans, this police does not require reforms, it requires transformation. You need to transform the police service. Because reform is a lighter element of changing. But when you talk of transformation, it's a paradigm shift. You must move them from this to what we want them to be. And therefore, even as we came up with this structure of policing, I know we had 4 pillars. Debarl and Kenyans need to know this. The first pillar was on legislative policing and institutional reforms. The second was police accountability. The third was police professionalism. And the fourth one was about administration, operational preparedness, logistical capacity, policing tools, and kitting. Now we know your security is as strong as the weakest link. Now we can talk about reforming this country, but if the institution that is empowered by the Constitution does not have the capacity to be part of the reform agenda, then I think we shall not be doing anything much. So therefore, as a group, I think they sat down and said, we must be part and parcel of how we need to run with this reform agenda. And therefore, the police have come up with a new book, 2015-2018. That is the second stage of the reform. The first one was 2012, 2011 to 2014. They came up with IPOA, National Police Service Commission, independence of the DCI. But we're also asking them that within this new framework that they're talking about, what is it they have done? Now, the weakest link in these reforms is the welfare of the men and the women in uniform. Mm-hmm. Until we deal with that in terms of salaries, in terms of housing, in terms of transportation, in terms of allowances, I think this is what this group needs to do. And for once, the government must look at salaries and welfare of the police, even as we speak about reforming the institution of the policing structures in this country. And therefore, as a group, we shall wish and we shall look forward to see how we can work in tandem with them to ensure that for once, the president will not be taken for a ride. The team that has been put in place will not be taken for a ride by people who want to tell us we are reforming the police, and yet we know that the security sector is not reforming in tandem with their strategic goals and strategic objectives. So that is the role we wish to play and ensure that Kenyans work together with this team so that by the time we are through this framework, then we must see some changes in what we expect as a reformed police institution. That's why we are here. And we hope to walk the journey together and assist each other so that we ensure we are never taken for a ride again. The president is never taken for a ride, so that the country achieves what we need to achieve, because money has been allocated for serious police reforms, but we never see it in terms of how the police are projecting themselves. And when you look at some of the documents the police have come up with in terms of this process of reforming, they never shared with Kenyans. But when you go through some of them, you realize some of them are not even in tandem with the national governance structure. In terms of policing is under the National Security Council, and the structures must be in tandem as you go down. So you realize they're concentrating more on what police commanders need to do, as opposed to ensuring that they're working together very closely in terms of realizing the role that the county commissioners play in our national security architecture. So I think these are the things we wish to work with them and ensure that we reform the way it's supposed to be done.
Right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and of course, as he walks over to take his seat, we want also to see how we can deal with the dissenting voices. And the Third Way Alliance Party has faulted the work of the task force on the Building Bridges initiative. The party says the task force formation did not follow the constitutional procedure, and since its inception has not been serving the public interest. The party says that the Building Bridges initiative by President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga so far has failed to deliver on its purported rules. The party's findings indicate that the task force has only been duplicating the work of already existing constitutional commissions. The Third Way Alliance says that instead of pumping money into the task force, the money should instead be used to strengthen other commissions with clearly defined roles to enhance their capacity. I'll run you by, of course, the graphics. They are actually putting some of their sentiments. The Kura Court-led alliance says the task force has not been of any significance to Kenyans despite the good intentions of the handshake. The party is calling for the degazettement, I should say, of the task force to save Kenyans unnecessary financial losses. So that's where we begin also our conversation and looking at what has been highlighted by our panelists this morning. Remember also you can join us on Twitter. Live NTV is a Twitter handle, and Live NTV is a profile name on Facebook as well. Let's just begin with you, Florence. Just beginning with this particular sentiment from Third Way Party, the Third Way Alliance Party, that yes, it should be, they're seeking for de-gazettement. They're saying also this is a heavy toll to the taxpayer as well. Already we are starting on wrong footing if not all of us as Kenyans, we are on the same page. What is your sentiment?
I think we don't have to always agree on everything, and everybody is entitled to their views and their opinions and their perceptions, and valid or not valid in terms of whatever initiatives are generated to help move a country forward.
Yes.
And so, you know, you respect that. However, what you ask yourself is, if you see there's a window of opportunity, do you seize it or do you just, you know, let it pass? And I think what we're saying in the Dialogue Contact Group is we see the handshake as something that, and the Building Bridges initiative, as an opportunity to rally citizens to ask themselves critical questions on if there are those 11 agenda items that have been stipulated in the Building Bridges initiative.
Yes.
Do I find room and space to have my own conversation, be it with my neighbor, be it within my sector, to capitalize on the opportunity? Because what we are basically saying is that we do not want to go through this cycle of violence every 5 years.
Yes.
Secondly, we had a Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission. We have not healed as a nation. So how do we move forward, you know, without losing the opportunity that we have right now? So I think for me, what I would say is that, yes, let's be cautious. Let's debate about the worthiness of you know, of the Building Bridges initiative. But then let's also ask ourselves, so what do I do in the meantime to make sure that the very ills that brought about the fact that we even have to have a Building Bridges initiative are dealt with? Do I have an alternative? Can I present a different narrative? Can I mobilize differently in order to be able to achieve those aims? Because when you look at the points of the Building Bridges, we are talking about inclusivity. We are talking about divisive elections. We are talking about shared responsibility. So it hinges on some of the very fundamental things that constantly keep recurring. And so we have an opportunity to not allow ourselves again to be derailed, but to take responsibility as citizens and ask ourselves, is it just the politicians who need to guide this process of building the bridges, or do I have a role to play as a citizen?
Right.
And what does healing and reconciliation mean?
Good question, good question.
Yeah.
And of course, we want to also see that particular issue you're raising, that we're dealing with an issue that is consistently recurring, right? So it is a vicious cycle that we're going through. So are we none the wiser as Kenyans? Because it seems we have so many initiatives. Kura yangu, sauti yangu, it will come and go. It will be another initiative when it comes to another electioneering cycle. But we do not deal decisively with the main issue. We've become a talking nation, right? Talking a good game about everything and no action at all at the end of the day. So how are we assured, even when we come to the civil society's space as well, that this will be the prime solution, that this will be that particular sword that will cut on the Gordian knot? Suba.
Thank you very much. I think the position that the Third Way Alliance has taken is a bit extreme, because one, Third Way Alliance itself is not offering an alternative. They lie in wait like a python for any passerby.
Yes.
And attack. I think that is not the kind of attitude that we'd want to see. Our engagement as civil society, as with the people, stems from Article 1 of the Constitution, that the sovereign power of this republic vests in the citizenry. And the mere fact that we elected leaders in August 2017.
Yes.
The mere fact that we established through a constitutional framework and other laws, constitutional commissions and institutions, does not mean that as citizens we washed our hands and are waiting for 2022. We have a role to continuously engage in governance and development processes, and peace and harmony in society is integral to that governance and development process. And therefore, our engagement needs to be understood in that context. Of course, I understand perhaps where the Third Way Alliance is coming from. Perhaps they feel that, you know, they are not on the table. And these are natural. It is natural for people to feel that, you know, we are not part of this process. And I want to say that, you know, Ekuru Aukot and his team is actually welcomed to all these initiatives that are taking place.
But of course they're basing their arguments on the constitutional basis, that this is unconstitutional. We should seek a de-gazettement of you know, the whole initiative in the first place. Don't you think also we're facing maybe a challenge that someone will walk to court and try and scuttle the whole process in the first place?
I've already quoted the basis on which this process are based. Article 1 of the Constitution. I mean, it cannot be unconstitutional. If, for example, you left out the fact that Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta is President of the Republic, you know, he's first and foremost a Kenyan. The former Prime Minister, Honorable Raila Odinga, despite not being an elected political leader at the moment, is a citizen. What is wrong with citizens getting together to discuss issues that they think lost some momentum at some point in time? And I agree, of course, that we have the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation. And we should not dismiss all these processes.
Thank you.
Because the TGRC process enabled us to know what are the underlying causes of our disharmony. What are the underlying causes of our differences that occasionally wait for a spark during elections to explode.
Right.
So the TGRC process took at some point, but we must also admit that as a country, there was a time when this TGRC process seemed not to have been bringing everybody on board. And for the first time, you remember in the period leading to the 97 elections, the religious leaders spearheaded a process that was called National Peace Accord.
Yes.
We did not have the blessing of the president. Now we have a process that is led by the president and is led by the former prime minister. In my view, the two most powerful people on the land. And therefore, what is wrong if civil society, if religious leaders, if professional bodies, if former parliamentarians come together to see what contribution they can make to make sure that this process delivers.
All right. Maybe the question we should ask ourselves as well is, yes, you as the dialogue contact group, you were supposed to be like a shadow team that is aiding, you know, the Building Bridges initiative, first of all. What sort of pertinent questions will you be raising? Because if we come to you, Patrick Obath, there is a whole issue of funding, which is now crippling this particular BBI or the initiative itself, that you don't have fundings, and people are wondering, is this coming from Treasury? Is there any allocation maybe from the Office of the President to aid this particular? And this is what may be very germane issues that are being raised by a third-party alliance, that yes, where do we draw this funding from? Is it from Treasury? Is it from the Presidency? Where is the kitty? He talks about the National Peace Accord that was there. We've heard about the National Cohesion and Reconciliation Commission. We know so far the term ended. We've not reconciled as a country. The peace accord, nothing really worked with it. So we have another initiative. We don't know where it will go. And these are the things that we're talking about. So many organizations, no finances, commissions, they come and go, but no ultimate solutions. So those are actually two questions in one.
Okay, first of all, I must sort of take my hats off to the grammar that my good friend Ekuru Aukot has put down. I like it. Amorphous, duplicious, directionless, confusing, and unconstitutional.
Hey.
I love the English. But I think the one thing you're seeing in all this question is it is about them doing it. People are looking at the Building Bridges Initiative doing something. The Building Bridges Initiative is a coordination body, just like the DCG. Right? All it does is it's going to bring together a whole host of people. So what should happen is that within the government itself, within the political parties, why don't they fund this initiative if they believe that it is going to work? Why do you have to look anywhere else? Because it's a people's initiative. It's an initiative between the president and Raila. So why don't they go to Jubilee, ODM, and whatever it is and fund it? Let us forget about that other person over there. The key thing here, and I think this is about the DCG here as well.
Yes.
Each of us has got our own constituency, which has brought us to that table. We are going to go back to our constituency and say, this is what we are going to do towards the Building Bridges initiative. We are not going to ask for funding from the Building Bridges initiative. We are not going to ask for funding from the DCG. We are going to look at how we are going to be able to ourselves engage and make it happen. And I think the element of the Building Bridges initiative is that they are a coordinating body. They need to bring everybody together under this handshake principle. But it is us, as the different sectors, the different players, who have to then turn that into actions for ourselves. We keep talking about all these other bodies that have to do certain things, but they are not going to deliver for us. If we say this is what needs to happen and walk away, it will never happen. And that has been the disease in this country forever. We have great ideas, we come back, put them together. The TJRC, they did a great job, came out with a report, and that just then lay there.
All right.
It hasn't actually been operationalized.
All right,
so I think we need to take, as Kenyans, as organizations that are concerned about where this country is going, we need to pick up what we know how to do, what we can influence, and make it happen. Otherwise, we'll sit here and forever be waiting for somebody else to do it.
Right.
And I think that's where we are going.
But he has pertinent issues, you know, and there is where we have the chink in the armor. First of all, that yes, we do have this good initiative, but under what framework are we really talking about? When it comes to financing, you've mentioned it amorphous. Do you think, from your own estimation, there's you know, a sort of whole issue of ambiguity on how we can structure the initiative itself? Because first of all, no, these are pertinent questions. He is a dissenting voice. We need also to ask ourselves critical questions, because you said for a whole good year is when now we shall realize the benefits of the 9 points agenda. We want to know, what is the framework? Where are we going to get the money? Are we going back to the wananchi who are waiting for the 1st of September again with the value added tax on fuel? Then we come up with the issues of how we can raise money to realize, you know, the 9 points agenda. These are critical questions we need to ask first of all.
I fully agree, but I think the point here is, and I'll repeat this very many times. In business, when you go and look at the contract that brought you together with somebody else, you have a problem. When the contract becomes the discussion point. Because the contract is basically the final thing that you go back to when you have issues. If you are working well, you do not need that contract, because as individuals, you are actually relating very well. So to start going back to this is unconstitutional, this is whatever it is and so forth, really we are missing the point. This is an initiative of goodwill, of people who have come together to try and make things work. So why are we throwing constitution at them? Let us look at how we can make the thing work, not why isn't it going to work, because it's not this, it's not that, it's not the other.
Right.
So we, ourselves, including the Third Way Alliance, have to come to the table and say, we like this thing, but not throw mud at it.
Just a moment, but we have to admit the fact that not everyone is seeing, of course, the good initiative that this is bearing. Because people will see that this is maybe a political expediency for some people who are in it. What is there for us? So not everyone has a political will for all this initiative, the BBI that we are working on.
This is part of the fact that the dialogue contact group has come together. We were all pulling in different directions.
Thank you.
Exactly the same way.
Right. Let's say from former speaker.
In fact, that is that's the more reason, Debarl, why we came together as the multi-sectoral dialogue contact group, because we don't want this good initiative again to be hijacked by the politicians. We want it to be an agenda for Kenya. So coming to what Third Way Alliance leader stated, first, you know, he's my kinsman. And I will defend his right to be heard, yes, and to be different from the rest. Two, he raises legal issues, which we have a robust judiciary, which is at liberty to go and canvass So to me, that's just part of the discussion. It's good when you have somebody at least giving you a different opinion, so that all of us cannot agree. I grew up in a culture where people used to say, "Muse akisema amesema," and I think we are trying to debunk that kind of a culture. My own reading of this initiative is that in Article 134 and Article 135, which gives the president his constitutional powers and duties and exercise of his powers, is very clear. He has to operate within the constitution or legislation. And so he is required every year to address parliament. It is a constitutional requirement. And you know on what? Not just the traditional address about legislative proposals, but now there's a requirement that he must also give the country how we have realized the national values, one, and two, how he has also addressed the international obligations of the state. That is fundamental. And so when you talk about the national values, unity, patriotism, rule of law, democracy, public participation, sharing of devolution. Now, those are all agendas within the Building Bridges initiative. So you can argue that it's actually within the work of the president. And so that gives it the constitutional seal that is required. So, but for others, for the grammar, that has been exercised. I am extremely excited because I think we are making history as a nation. You know, for the first time, you can have two Turkanas talking at the national platform.
Okay, let's hear from Dr. Werunga.
I want to look at it in two aspects.
Yes.
One, I think we need to understand the context in which this process has been established. And two, we need to understand what powers and legitimacy does the president have to govern this country. And we know the president has powers within the constitution to use state organs to govern this country, but he's also given powers to use policy frameworks to sell his governance process. And therefore, for us to go back to the issue of constitution, I think we are missing the point. The president governs a country through executive orders, policy frameworks, constitutional institutions as the head of state and the chief executive. Now, how do you then arrive to an idea that you want to legislate in this country unless you have a policy framework process that will inform the president on whether this idea is good for the country or is not good for the country? And that's why the president and ministers have powers within the law to appoint even task forces to come up with policy documents to assist the government govern itself. So I think this idea of building bridges is within that framework of the president's governance mandate to be assisted to think through. That's why most governments in the West, they have think tanks. You see, you bring in a think tank, it thinks for you, it gives you what we call a policy note. The policy note is used to develop a policy document. That policy document is supposed to be debated within the cabinet, and if it makes sense, then it is taken to parliament. I don't know the procedure, but I'm just saying. Then it becomes a law. So therefore, I don't think Ekuru is right on this one, because the president has various means under the law to govern a country. And I think this is where this thing is coming in. The end process of this building bridges initiative is to come up with a policy document that would be used by the government to do what is good for this country. You don't need to go back to the constitution. And therefore we need to understand. And when I talked about the context in which this idea has been established, personally I'm looking at it this way. 2007, we were forced because of circumstances, violence and everything. This time is a very voluntary process that is very objective between the two people. And therefore, even some of us, as we come in under this group, we are understanding that this is a very voluntary thing, that has been started by two people who sat down by themselves and they think they want to do this for this country. That completely changes the dynamics under which this building bridges is being undertaken and what we did after the post-election violence.
Thank you. Let's hear from Florence. Come to you, Suba.
Just to say that as we are promoting the whole question of having a national dialogue, part of that national dialogue will be also to unearth some of the fears, the mistrust that we have, which is very valid. Like you rightly said, I mean, we've had previous reports, previous initiatives, previous commissions established in the country to try and deal with some of the ills that we continuously grapple with.
Yes.
And they have brought about disappointment. Some of them have not delivered. And so I can understand that Kenyans definitely, whatever new initiative is formed by government, they are suspicious. There's no trust. There's fear that, maybe we are being taken for a ride by the politicians again for their own expedience. And I believe that when we talk about healing and reconciliation, we have to give room for these fears, for this mistrust,
yes,
okay, to also be heard and to ask the individuals who feel that they can't trust particular processes or can't trust particular institutions or initiatives, what alternative then would you suggest? What is it exactly that you're not, happy about? If, for instance, it's the funding, if you feel it's a duplication, what then are you saying? How should we go about this? And allowing ourselves to have these conversations with an open mind, what it does is that it then creates understanding amongst ourselves, and we're able to look at various options and ask ourselves, so is it better to go the BBI way, or how can we enhance BBI?
Yes.
Because I don't believe we are called to just support things blindly. But it's a question of saying, if we have a golden opportunity, how do we make BBI a citizen's agenda? Is that possible? All right? Is that doable? And I believe that it can be a vehicle through which people can find healing and restoration for the nation.
All right, let's say from Suba, then we...
Yes, I think with all due respect to Dr. Ekuru, knowing very well that he was in the committee of experts that crafted the final draft constitution that was adopted, but I wanted to take him through the memory lane, that those of us who have been in these processes a little longer than Ekuru Aukot, starting from our days at the university, forming the National Convention Executive Council in '97.
Yes.
When we negotiated for the framework within which the constitutional review process was to take place, it was outside the law. And we have always found as a country a way of mainstreaming these processes within the legal and constitutional framework. So we started these negotiations. I remember the painstaking negotiations that were chaired by Bishop Sulumeti at the Safari Park Hotels in '97 that led to the enactment of the Constitution of Kenya Review Commission Act. So it became law. We have again, time and again, as late as last year, when we negotiated for the process that brought on board the current IEBC.
Yes.
I mean, the whole process was done outside the legal framework. And at some point when consensus was reached, it was brought within the constitutional and legal framework. We have always had these opportunities, and I think the BBI initiative and what the civil society is trying to do together with the religious sector and the professionals is to say, look, is this not an opportunity for us as a country to dialogue on some of these issues that have always bedeviled us? And at some point, and I'm sure, once concrete things will emerge from the discussions that have ensued, they'll be brought on board within the legal and constitutional framework. So I think we just need to plead with Ekuru and his team to expand their memory a little bit and go beyond when they started engaging in this process, because some of us have been part of this process for a little longer.
All right. So we have here, I'm holding a report that came from the South Consulting. This is the Kenya National Dialogue and Reconciliation Building a Progressive Kenya report. And this actually led now, of course, during that talks that we had to the National Accord and Reconciliation Act 2008, which marked the end of the violence. The parties agreed to a four-point agenda that we do know. First of all, it was immediate action to stop the violence and restore fundamental rights and liberties. Immediate measure to address the humanitarian crisis and promote healing and reconciliation. This was on, of course, this particular Act 2008. how to overcome the political crisis. Also addressing long-term issues, including undertaking constitutional, legal and institutional reforms, land reforms, tackling poverty and inequality, as well as combating regional development imbalances, tackling unemployment, particularly among the youth, consolidating national cohesion and unity, and addressing transparency and accountability, and also impunity. Then we have the Building Bridges initiative as well. How dramatically different are they? Because first of all, they say we want to deal with ethnic antagonism, right? Where can we place it on the agenda 4 that we had here when we talk about ethnic antagonism? Secondly, we are talking about lack of national ethos. When we talk about national ethos, what do we mean? I mean, that's a critical question we should ask ourselves. We have the Constitution here, and we have the Constitution that has Article 10, which espouses the national values of a country. So what is ethos that we'll have in the Building Bridges that you'll be holding talks to talk about, and still we have a Constitution on this? Just make me understand where there is a demarcation line between the BBI and the National Accord and Reconciliation Act 2008, where we have the 4-point agenda.
I think, Debarl, let us not see this as an event. The country is going through a journey. And the items that were put in that National Accord at that time were weighty items. Although there are only 4 very simple statements, the implementation of those could take years. And what you're seeing is basically the steps that we take, just like a baby is born and then learns to crawl, walk, and run. We should not try and run when we haven't developed the others. So what you've seen after the post-election violence in 2007-8 was basically the process that took a couple of years to actually get the constitution that we have now. So that was the building block for everything else. After that happened, then we had to start implementing some of the actions. So we went into devolution. We went into forming all the various agencies that were actually supposed to help deliver on what was the National Reconciliation and Accord agreement that was at that time. So we are still on that journey. As you go ahead delivering on the process, you find that you started something and it didn't quite work. You have to recalibrate and start again. So we've had, this is now the second election after 2007. And the one thing that has come up very clearly from that time is we shall never have the same kind of violence. So that was actually a stake in the ground that we're seeing is actually slowly being delivered. So in looking at the Building Bridges initiative, it's just taking an opportunity of 2 senior politicians coming together and saying, let us not throw stones at each other. Let us see how we can actually reconcile the 2 of them in a particular way. So it is part of the journey around reconciliation as a nation. It is not the one act that will do it. And I think we have to remember that as a nation, we are never going to say that as of today, we are fine.
All right, let's hear from Ekwe.
Debarl, I think there is a context, and what you have read is really what we are trying to do. We were able to achieve, like on the day that agreement was signed, violence actually stopped. Then we went into the second one of humanitarian assistance, giving IDPs assistance and all that, which was another protracted process to the extent that I had to form a task force in Parliament and a committee to look into it, including a law that is in our statute books now. The third one was about political settlement. That created the coalition government. And the fourth agenda is an ongoing agenda. We did the constitution. We attempted some reforms in the land sector, which I think I agree with the security experts, it should be another area for transformation. And then those others, regional inequalities, marginalization, and the rest, they are still in existence. There is no expectation that that could be exhausted in a period of 5 years. So to me, this Building Bridges initiative, and I don't hold a
brief
for them.
Yes.
But I am just looking at myself as a Kenyan. who is interested in a country that has such potential, but has been held back by politics, really, by tribal ethnicity. So when the President of the Republic goes out of his way, in peacetime again, which is something uniquely Kenyan now, because people do things when they're in trouble. Although we had some trouble, of course, in terms of destruction and all this, but largely in peacetime, that we are able to say we can actually audit that agenda. Number four. How far have we made progress? What is needed? And when you have a political commitments of Kenyans, I am convinced Kenyans, ordinary Kenyans, have no problem. It's us politicians who go and incite Kenyans. It's us who profile a tribe. It is not ordinary Kenyans. Ordinary Kenyans have friendships across the communities. So to me, the handshake gives it that political impetus. For once, now we can all at least we are not afraid of when is the next demonstration. We had demonstrations until the year 2017, until that day when I decided that we are going to give that security law a bit of public participation in the Senate. That is what NASA declared already, was it 4th January, another demonstration. So when we gave that opportunity of public participation, then that demonstration did not take place, and there was no demonstration until after elections again.
Thank you.
So I want to plead with other skeptics. Yes, it is good to be skeptical because we have been there before.
Yes.
But more fundamentally, if you are a young family with still issues to resolve, you give birth to a child and he dies, do you stop procreating?
Please.
You continue.
Right, thank you. Let's hear from Dr. Werume.
Yeah, I think I want to look at it from this angle. Agenda 4, look at it from project management. Project management is a circle. And when you go this circle, there are moments where you need to do a review of what, project planning. So we must understand that agenda number 4 was like our project. And from time to time, we needed to review what we have achieved, what we have not achieved, what is the level of qualification. And from time to time, we needed to ask ourselves as a country, how far have we gone on ABCD? And therefore, to me, I don't understand why we are having this issue. Because governance can be framed within a program circle and say Agenda 4 was a program for this country. It was a journey. And therefore, from time to time, we needed to review. Even as the speaker said, we put laws in this country, police reforms, everything. But even within the framework of police reforms, we achieved the laws, but we are still reviewing the progress. That's why we have strategic plans for 5 years, for 3 years, and that's why we need to look at it. That Agenda 4 is a massive process that I think this Building Bridges initiative is just one of the commas to sit back, evaluate what we've done, and why did we not achieve it, and therefore within this peaceful framework of wanting to achieve it, what can we do? That's why the Building Bridges will come up with a document that will inform Kenyans how far we've gone and what we need to do to achieve Agenda 4.
To achieve Agenda 4. But yes. I think also predicated where all this, when we ask ourselves questions, why are we having BBI? It's because we have a political crisis, isn't it, in the first place? So why was it not dealt with over the years, yet it was one of the poignant points that we had within the Agenda 4? Let's just prepare, talk about that even as we're preparing also our headline thoughts to wind up. Let's begin with you, Florence.
I think
so we're still there.
Yes.
You've circled back to the same place with the BBI. We have it. Political crisis on Agenda 4, political crisis on the BBI, political crisis on Agenda 4.
I think we have to be honest with ourselves. And more so, I think, the political leadership of this country. Leadership is supposed to offer vision, direction, and when we came up with the National Accord and it had the Agenda 4 items that are long-term issues that need to be grappled with and dealt with, I think the button was dropped somewhere. Because we needed to have a sense that we are building on what we had agreed on as a nation based on the agreement that we had. But what we found is that even when reports like the TJRC came out and reforms began, there was no champion to show the Kenyans that, yes, we are working on the very things that took us to the violence in 2017. And so we find ourselves, again, because people are disgruntled and those issues have not been dealt with, they find expression of violence during elections. So we have to be honest with ourselves, and especially for me, the political leadership, because the onus is on them to ensure that the aspirations of the Kenyan, the healing, the reconciliation, those that have been wounded, that indeed their concerns are taken care of. And they need to be the ones championing the reforms in the country. So we need to be honest with ourselves.
Super, briefly.
I think as a country we have a history and deliberately perhaps chosen the path of pursuing our changes and transformation through an evolutionary as opposed to a revolutionary approach. As a country, we have always made progress. They have been incremental. They have not been the thunderstorm that we have had in neighboring countries like Uganda, like in Libya and elsewhere. And I think going back to the National Peace Accord, and including some of the targets that we had set for ourselves. Do we have a constitution? Yes, we have a constitution. But constitutions are not an end in themselves. They provide the framework within which you pursue the long-term goals that you have set for yourselves as a country. Developmental, ensuring there's peace and harmony, ensuring there's national union. And that's why all these values and principles of governance are to be found in Article 10. And that was not to say that Kenyans will now fold their arms and say, hallelujah, we have a new constitution and all our problems are solved. So I think the ongoing dialogue, BBI, the dialogue contact group with the people, all these initiatives are coming to say, gentlemen, how do we move this process forward from where we left?
Patrick Obat, let's hear from you even as we're winding up. I wish we
just
had more time. The conversation is getting sweeter.
I just have one simple statement. As a nation, as the leadership of this nation, we have to take one or two key items and move with them until they're entrenched in us as a country. We are trying to pursue a lot of things at the same time. So if I was to be in a position to influence the BBI, I would take chapter 6 of the Constitution, because that alone can actually allow us to implement the whole Constitution. And implement chapter 6 ruthlessly. Basically try and change the ethos, the culture, the way we work, the way we relate.
Thank you.
Once that is done, effectively, the rest follows.
Thank you. Right. Let's hear from Speaker Ekwe.
You think these are the last...
Yeah. We'll have another forum.
Debarl, I think as we conclude, a nation is not... The famous one, Rome was not built in a day. The Kenyan nation is work in progress. We have achieved so much, but there is still so much to be realized. We have had frameworks that have worked to some extent, and you have to look at it, at independence, we had a bicameral system of parliament. We had basically, and then we spent like between 63 and 69, 10 amendments to the constitution, demolished the entire structure. We spent another 50 years to go back to where we are. At least now, within 8 years, from the enactment of 2010 constitution, we are actually auditing that constitution in a way. And so, to me, let's support the initiative. We should not be tired.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Virunga Simiyu?
Yes, I think the initiative is a review mechanism. We've achieved legislation, we've achieved policy frameworks, but we realize we've not completely gotten what we wanted out of these issues. So we are looking at what it is that, although we have the legal frameworks, we have policy frameworks, what is it that still keeps us going back to some of those things that we thought we should deal with after the post-election violence.
Thank you.
So to me, the initiative is good, and we hope the goodwill will be there to ensure that we achieve what we want.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much. I really want to appreciate you coming through, and I promise this won't be the last one. I think we should pick up on this and we go with a 9-point agenda from the beginning. We want to thank you so much so that we can try and compare the agenda 4 and of course the 9 points agenda. How far have we come? Peter Drucker says what is not measured cannot be effectively managed. Thank you very much. Right, and I want to thank you also for your valued company and your reactions on Twitter. We're stuffed for time, we can't read all of them, but nonetheless, this panel will be here next month also to take us through what is on the 9 points agenda as well. So let's support the BBI as well to see a peaceful country. My name is Debarl Inea. Living with Us is up next.